Hello once again and welcome to another in a series of talks with creatives from every corner of the industry on the topic of what it means to live well as a creative in the world today. My name is Andrew Macklin. I'm an actor and a qualified career coach. Joining me today, I'm delighted to welcome actor and professional Welshman, Andrew Macbean. Andrew, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good. Professional Welshman.
I was right with your nationality, wasn't I?
Yeah, totally.
Fantastic.
If Welsh is the nationality, I'm not even sure if it is. But yeah, I am from Wales.
I'm thinking of adding professional Irishman to my own sort of spotlight title, in case it doesn't come across in the accent work. I might just give people who are watching a bit of a run through your CV, if that's not horribly painful for you. It might.
Oh, I love it.
It might be delightful. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, if I've gotten any of these wrong, but some of your credits to date include Twelfth Night and Amadeus at the National Theatre, Hedda Gabler at the Old Vic, Richard III, Titus Andronicus and Measure for Measure, all at the RSC, Pressure at the Ambassadors Theatre, A Christmas Carol at the Trafalgar Studio, Bloody Sunday, The Savile Inquiry, which I would have loved to have seen, but I didn't get to, at the Tricycle, Killer Joe at the Old Vic Studio of Bristol, amongst a lot of other theatre, which we can get into. On TV, Torchwood, Poirot, EastEnders, Whistleblower, Postcode, and my personal favourite, which I wasn't aware of, which I think is beautiful, is the interestingly titled character, Dr. Phallus, in Keith Lemon, the movie. Tell me a little bit about that, out of curiosity.
I was in two Keith Lemon. The first one was Keith Lemon's Fit, which was basically a fitness video. So lots of opportunity for Keith to stand with scantily clad women and make sexist comments. And in that I played a nutritionist, and the second one was the film. And basically he was having a penis transplant and he just wanted it to be bigger and bigger. And I had the dubious pleasure of performing the transplant. And then, of course, I had to stand there with a very beautiful nurse, and he showed his gratitude to us.
Fantastic. Now, I mean, like many actors, I'm sure, when you started at drama school, I mean, maybe that was part of what your ideal might have been. I mean, I'm not sure in those early days when you're working on your Richard III's and your Hamlets, whether that was in your mind, but well, we know each other originally from Bristol Vic Theatre School, which we both went to. But interestingly, to me at least, when I went, we were, I think, very different there in my mind. And you were notable. I was 18 when I went, and so just legally able to drink. And I think in my mind, notably, you weren't 18. You were...
I was 44.
Which, I mean, I think was... to my eyes, was incredible because it was very much a younger experience. Even, as 18, everyone else there seemed to be below the age of 25. And so I always, in my mind, thought, how must it be for you coming in? And how was that returning to education? And by education, what a bizarre education it must have been to go back there. But how was it to be going to drama school at that age?
It was really amazing because when you've been working, you know how awful it is. And you know how exhausting it is at the end of the week. And, you need to reward yourself. Going to drama school, you just take. And all those poor tutors, they feel shit at the end of the week. They feel exhausted. And you feel like, oh my God, I've just learned all these fantastic things. And you may be physically exhausted, but you're jazzed up because it's such a nourishing experience. And as well, I think when you go there in your 40s, you've sort of dealt with all the issues of youthful angst. And, I was the same age as most of the tutors, if not some of them, I was older than them. So there was absolutely nothing they could say that was going to put me in my place or do me down or whatever drama tutors want to do. It was like, look, I'm paying to be here. So I can walk out of here. You can't, because this is your job. I'm free as a bird. So it was a wonderful experience. And being all of a sudden with a whole bunch of other people who initially, because of the age difference, there was a little bit of reticence. But after you've been through the humiliations of, a dance class and changing into your jock strap in, a ridiculously small changing room and having somebody's fat, hairy ass stuck in your face, it's like after a few weeks, I noticed that that reticence just disappeared, and that people just sort of treated me with the same level of respect or disrespect that I deserved. So I had a great time, and it just got better and better until I left, and then of course it got worse and worse.
and we'll get to that. I mean, it sounds like two things. It sounds like a sort of a delight in the revenge of you being allowed to be a student with people who had to be professional, and you jumped out of that. But also, it sounds, as you say, I mean, fascinating to go back at that age and have shed all of that sort of insecurity of youth and be very much just, I guess, in a position where you could be completely you and open to taking the best of the experience.
Totally.
And so I'm intrigued, as I'm sure people watching might be, as to, what were you up to before then, and how different was it to what you decided to do with drama school?
I ran a television sales and distribution company, which basically means that you raise money to make television programs, and then you sell them around the world, the format, the finished program, and so on. And we specialized in documentaries and animation. I ran an animation studio in Manchester for a while called Cosgrove Hall Films that made Danger Mouse and Duckula and things like that. And we had this massive company. I mean, we turned over 180 million pounds a year. We had offices all over the world, clients all over the world. We represented some of the biggest documentary producers in the who've ever been, people like National Geographic, Discovery, programs from the BBC, Channel 4, Survival from the Natural History series. So we were like, with the BBC and ITEL, which is the company I ran, we were the biggest documentary producers in the world. So if somebody wanted a documentary, that's where they came to us, which, we worked hard to achieve that. And it wasn't just me. I just sort of twiddled the knobs a bit. There was a big team of people. So it was a corporate life. I started drama school at 15 stone, and I finished drama school just over 13 stone, because, that sort of, to me, exemplifies what just the change in life. Mm-hmm. But it was good. I mean, I was ready for it. I basically, in my early 40s, I was beginning to think, what do I want my life to look like? What is it going to be in 10 years' time? Mm-hmm. What will be like when I'm 50? And I thought, I don't really want it to be just more of this. There must be something else to do. And I was thinking, maybe I'll set up my own business. Maybe I'll go and work for an American firm. I don't know what, exploring various options. And I literally one day woke up and I thought, no, I think I will go to drama school. Mm-hmm. I'd always wanted to be an actor since I was, a kid. And going to watch weekly rep in Swansea Grand Theatre. And so I went in that day and I gave my notice in, and I had to give 12 months notice. So they said, okay, yeah, don't worry, don't say anything to anybody at the moment, and we'll work this out. And for 6 months, we talked about it, and they basically didn't really believe me. And various people on the board and, whoever came to talk to me, inviting me out for lunch. And at the end of it, they were all saying, you're making the right decision. This sounds fantastic. And they sort of bought into my passion for what I was going to do. And at the same time, I was beginning to audition for drama schools. And so I'd go to work in my suit, and then I'd go to an audition, do that, and then jump back in the taxi, go back to work to another meeting. And I got into a few drama schools. And then I told one of my clients, who was head of drama for the BBC, for the Arts and Entertainment Channel in the States, what I was doing. And she said, "Oh, well, that's absolutely marvelous." She said, "I'm over this weekend and I'm going to stay with John and Penny Mortimer." And she said, "On Saturday night, we're having dinner with Richard Eyre and his wife, who was the producer of Pride and Prejudice, whose name I can't recall just at the moment." And she said, "I'll have a chat to them and see, I'll ask them the merits of these various drama schools." And I said, no, don't do that. And she said, "No, don't, she's really fine. I won't mention your name." And anyway, about a week later, she rang me up and she said, so I spoke to them, and she said, "Out of the drama schools that you said you'd been accepted in," she said, their view was that there was only one that you should go to. And if you couldn't get into that one, you shouldn't go to drama school. And that's the Bristol Old Vic. And that weekend I had my recall at the Bristol Old Vic. So it was like, oh my God, I have to get in. And I did, fortunately. So it was all right.
And I never knew that it had Richard Eyre's stamp of approval.
But I think they're just, that they're sort of the higher echelons of the industry. And I didn't feel that they necessarily were connected to what was happening on the ground floor. But but I did go with Richard Eyre and John Mortimer's sanction that I was doing the right thing.
I mean, what's really interesting there is it sounds like there was quite a supportive feeling in general, both from the people that you were around, people from work and people in other areas seemed to be thinking that this was, a great thing to do. And quite often, especially talking to younger people, there is a sense of resistance that society and the kind of, authority figures would put in place around, well, be a bit more interested in your own, or concerned about your own security going forward when thinking about these steps. What were then, because I'd imagine there must have been some challenges around stopping what you were doing, this job that you'd had, this way people knew you for all of these years, and what sounds like quite overnight going, actually, I'm really passionate about this. I'm going to completely move my life. There
was only one person, and he was a doer Scot. He was a really, he was a bit of a mentor of mine, but he was very, very austere. He was an accountant by trade, but he was chief executive of Anglia Television. And he said, he was the only one who said, "This is a ridiculous thing to do. You're mad. You mustn't do this." Everyone else said yes. And I still have a file. When eventually, after 6 months, the story broke in the trade press, and it was like, at that stage, I was sort of reasonably, it's, quite pathetic, but I was a big cheese in a very small pond. So people were like, "Oh my God, Andrew McBain's going to drama school. Is this true?" Because they all assumed that I was, going to work for an American studio or something. But I said, no, that's what I'm doing. And I couldn't believe it. I got letters from so many people, heads of studios, heads of television channels from all over the world. People, some of the people I didn't really know very well. And I also got them from their associates, from their assistants. Some of them handwritten letters, 2 or 3 pages long, telling me their personal stories about what their passions were. And it was like, I began to realize then how unhappy people were and how we get tied in at very, very, very early stages to this world where we need to earn this amount of money to have kids, to afford our mortgage, to send our kids to private school, to own 3 cars, to have 4 holidays, to be able to, have unlimited shopping opportunity. We're creating this horrific sort of monster of a hamster wheel that is slowly devouring our souls. And these people who had fantastic jobs, They were like, you know, the glamour jobs of the industry, if not the world. And they were telling me they didn't want to do them. I was astonished, but it did for me. It was like, yeah, I'm making the right decision.
Wow. I mean, what a reflection to hear back from the people around you that, like you say, are in those glamour jobs.
None of them have given me jobs since, but it was nice to have their support at the time.
It's incredible, I think, just to see that change that you made at that stage in your life, and to see that the peer group around you were so, as you say, A, supportive, but B, really feeling the burn of having committed so much to, I guess, what society is saying that you should be doing.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be the complete thumbs up for you going, well, I'm definitely doing the right thing as the God. You mentioned, obviously, that going to drama school, you know, you lost 2 stone as a result of that change in life. But I mean, for anyone, I guess
I wouldn't recommend it just as a diet plan, but there are easier ways of losing 2 stone.
There's probably cheaper ways of doing it, I imagine. But I mean, that changes. I think that changes everyone. That 3 years or 2 years, or just being in that environment and working in that way. But yet, how for you did you begin to see yourself differently, or did you by the end of the training?
I'm sure I saw myself differently. I would say that it took me another couple of years before I began to fully realize my new self in my new world, because I left drama school and I went straight into a weekly rep job down in Devon for 14 weeks, which was 1 play a week for 14 weeks. And then I came back to London and I did a non-speaking role in the Gate Theatre. And then I got picked up by the RSC for a season. And it was during the RSC that I realized that I didn't really know how to be an actor. I knew how to do the job on stage, you know, to learn the lines and not trip over and be jolly or to be sad or whatever. But fitting into a company and finding your place and that, you know, the right level of engagement with.
So some technical faults there, but we're back. And Andrew, we were just talking about, about you going to the RSC and the difference of learning between what it was to act, but actually being an actor was a separate process for you. So tell us more about that. What was that? What did that learning involve?
I think one of my, you know, formative experiences in theatre was going to see Julius Caesar at the RSC. And, you know, we didn't have theatres like that in Wales. Well, certainly not that I knew. And, you know, I thought it just felt like this was for people who weren't like me. You know, I still carried a lot of baggage of who I was. You know, I was this little no-hoper who didn't do brilliantly in school, who, you know, nobody really expected to achieve anything, who nobody really thought was serious about being an actor. And this wasn't, you know, I didn't have a bad experience as a child. It was all good, but that was how children, I thought that was normal, that's how children were treated. You know, you weren't these days, a child is told all the time, oh, you're so marvelous, you're so beautiful, you're so clever. It wasn't like that in those days. You know, there was a bit more reality associated with the world. And you know, we didn't, you know, my parents weren't fine, but they certainly weren't there to say, yes, you can do this. They were there to be the sort of the ballast of, well, let's get realistic about this. I remember when I was about, you know, when I was making decisions about, you know, was I going to apply to university or what was I going to do? Saying to my mother, well, I'd like to go to drama school. And she said to Andrew, she said, you're not cut out to starve in a garret. Now, you know, we didn't know any actors, we didn't know any writers or directors. My parents didn't go to the theatre. We went to the theatre once a year to the pantomime. And then when I was 14, I started to go on the bus to the weekly rep, and by myself. I mean, at 14, that's weird. And so that was my experience of the theatre. So all of a sudden to be on this stage that was like, it was like, you know, what it must have been like to walk into a massive Hollywood studio or something. It was like, this is for other people. And now all of a sudden I'm there walking on stage, speaking lines, roughly in the right order. And it was like, this is, I don't know, there was a mismatch between me, who I saw myself as, and who now I was. And it felt like everybody around me had confidence and pizzazz and charisma and all of these fabulous things that I wanted. But, you know, I now know, of course, it's an absolute load of bollocks that nobody had any of those things. Everyone was pretending. And, but it just takes time, doesn't it, to understand these things. And I'm not quite sure if drama school can ever teach you those things. It's, I don't know, it's something, it's life. You've got to grow into, you know, it's like when you put on a new pair of shoes, they never fit. Even if they're handmade, they still feel uncomfortable. And I think when you're jumping into a new world, you just have to wear them in a bit until they fit properly.
I mean, that's beautifully accurate, I think, to how psychologists might talk about the psyche shifting as it might need to in that way. But what a realization to have. I mean, I think for most actors, it would be going to the RC in the audience and sitting there and thinking, wow, this is a really big thing. Am I of this? But your experience was walking on stage. You were already there, and then getting there, and then having that, am I this? And I think your description of those perfectly made shoes are quite helpful. Because I think for quite a lot of artists of every kind, there's a sort of an imposter syndrome that comes up quite a lot. This sense of, well, if I am this thing, then surely I should be good at this thing. And surely this thing should feel very natural and instinctive to me. And then there's you describing this experience of going, well, here I am. For some people looking at that, they would be like, Andrew's made it. He is there's no way in which he can say that he isn't an actor at the RSC successfully doing that thing. He's there. And then to hear you internally say, yeah, I was out of place in that world. And so that process you're describing around just wearing the shoes in and taking time. But what I'm really interested in is that when did the realization and how did the realization happen for you that it was all bollocks? That the people who were, you know, I own this, I'm here, I'm, you know, of course, naturally brilliant at these things. What was that process? When did you begin to see that, you know, it's not that any of these people are in any way better. It's just that they're doing things differently. What was that realization for you like?
I'm not sure if I've had it yet. I still sort of, I think acting is a really hard job, and I'm still slightly in awe when I see really good actors, whether it be at a play reading or first day of rehearsal. I look at them and I think, wow, you know, you're something special. You know, to be able to turn in a performance is massive. So I am slightly still in awe of the whole process. I remember, I mean, it was interesting when you read out my edited highlights from my CV. You know, I could go through that CV and give you a totally different interpretation of it. You know, yeah, I was in Hedda Gabler at the Old Vic, understudying Darrell de Silva as Judge Brack. Yeah, I was in Bloody Sunday, the Savile Inquiry at the Tricycle, as a non-speaking actor who literally just sat on stage and pretended to sift through papers as a lawyer. You know, yeah, I went to the RSC in my first year out of drama school. In one of the plays I didn't speak, and I can remember the number of, I mean, I spoke 17 words in the first play, which took 14 weeks to rehearse. Even I can remember 17 words in 14 weeks. You know, so all of these things where we put our own spin on it. And this is, I'm not really answering your question, but I think the biggest challenge for me personally has been to believe in myself and to believe that actually I don't just have to, you know, that I'm okay, that I belong, that I can step onto those big stages and I can do my job. You know, probably some of the things you didn't read out in my CV are the shows that I've felt most comfortable in. You know, small little fringe theatres where in my view, I've done amazing work. Nobody's seen it, so nobody can actually tell you it's shit. But I know I've done a really good job there. And I think part of the reason I think I was able to do a really good job is because it was less exposing and not so many people saw it. You know, you do something at the Finborough and the maximum, only 50 people can tell you your shit a day. So, because that's the capacity of the auditorium. Whereas, you know, if you do the same shocking performance in the National, there's 1,200 people waiting to tell you you've done a terrible job. So I don't know. And I think that those smaller venues gave me more confidence in me. So when the ultimate happened, which was incredible, and miraculously I got offered a part at the National Theatre. I mean, walking in through that stage door for the first day of rehearsals was possibly it was such an exciting thing to do. And, you know, to stand in that massive circle with Rufus Norris saying, welcome, you are now a National Theatre Company member. I thought I was going to be sick. I was so excited. You know, and it was just an incredible experience. But I don't think that, you know, that was when did that happen? So 17 years into my career. And I don't think I would have been able to have even walked through the stage door if it hadn't have been for all of those other things. Because it's the bad things that happen to you that create you, give you the strength. You know, good things are easy, bad things are tough. And that's what gets you there. So I believe I need to embrace the bad things, the difficulties in a positive, open and welcoming way. It's like, yeah, bring them on. More the merrier, because it's strengthening me. It's making me into a more robust person.
I mean, what an outlook. And it sounds like quite a necessary outlook, especially given the times. I mean,
totally.
There'd be very strong arguments for anyone, I think, as an actor now saying, well, surely the odds that were already heavily against me are significantly more so. And
exactly.
I'm going to get a chance to act. And, you know, especially if you're leaving drama school as well, there's all that as well. So to hear you say that it is those bad things, essentially, that are giving you sort of the grounding required. And I can definitely resonate with that. Yeah, it's always the things that people on a CV never mention that are the most fundamentally growthful experiences that I've had as an actor.
Yeah.
You know, what's the best job you've had? It's always a job that they will never have heard of in a place they could never reach.
Exactly. But if you think about an actor who's come straight out of drama school and they go into their career rockets, you know, they get signed with a fabulous agent, and their next thing they're in some Hollywood movie or a West End show or the National or the RSC. Fabulous, great for them. Good luck to them. I absolutely applaud them, because I feel they are so vulnerable. They're so vulnerable to their agent. You know, all of those people who go to those agents, we know that 80% of those poor buggers who get signed with the big agents are going to get dropped at the end of the year, and they'll cream off the top 20% who've actually delivered through no fault of their own. The other 80%, they didn't quite deliver, and they're out. And you know, we know that's the way the industry works. But to face that after taking you up on that trajectory for 12 months and then you're back in the slough of despair and you haven't had those experiences of, you know, standing in a castle courtyard with the rain whipping around you and the wind billowing, you know, so you can't even see the audience, never mind speak to them. I don't know, you know, or getting into a van with 4 people, 4 actors you're not actually speaking to because you're so bored with each other's company. And, you know, driving another 1,000 miles to Dresden to put on the same show that you just can't even remember why you know, where you started. Those are the things that I'm so glad that I went through those. I would have quite liked the Hollywood film, and I'm ready for it now if there's anybody watching. But, you know, it's those grounding experiences that actually make you, that give me strength.
I mean, incredible to hear you talk that way about it. Well, my mind sticks to what you were talking about just before, because I think it's really interesting. We've talked about this idea of sort of resilience before, and the idea of the way in which you described having to take on that sort of the bad stuff that happens. Because I think there's a point perhaps maybe where I think it sounds like for you, there was a sort of, you had all of those experiences in the castle, in the van, that kind of tempered this, I think a lot of people have this incremental ambition that they think that it'll work in this way. And that I think perhaps if you start in the way that you did, maybe there's a sense of, look, it's an up and down rocky road. And I kind of learn to deal with that in the way that suits me best. And if there's a spike in a film, delight. And I'm still happy. Yeah. I mean, I know we've talked before on this, around this idea of sort of resilience, but I mean, for you, what is resilience for an actor? How do they have it or do it? And in what ways is it useful? Those are 3 questions.
I tell you, resilience is going to the first night screening party of Keith Lemon, the film. And the biggest celebrities in the party are Jedward. What some people won't even remember them, but they were Ireland's answer to, was it the X Factor or Pop Idol?
I think it was
whatever it was.
One of those.
But
yeah.
They were the biggest celebrities in the room, and that's when I realized I still had some mountains to climb. What was the rest of the question?
I guess it was just about resilience, because another actor might have stopped their career there.
Yeah, well, I completely understand that. And I think, you know, if people tell me they're giving up, I don't go, you know, that's sad. I think, great. Mm-hmm. You know, you've done what you wanted to do, and you now moved on to a new phase in your life. And, you know, great. Mm-hmm. I hope it works. There's nothing, it isn't a bad thing to have, for acting to have run its course. You know, it's what makes you happy. And if it doesn't make you happy, if it isn't going to fulfill your dreams, stop. Plenty of other things to do out there. But whilst you're still, what I think is really bad to do is you have to find ways of struggling through. If you really still want to do it, but you're giving up because the industry's given up on you, but you've still got that, you know, that gut-wrenching desire to be an actor, then it's a very destructive process. Mm-hmm. So what I think is vital is you have to figure out how you're going to stay solvent. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have enough money, you don't have the ability to make choices. So don't wait until your money runs out before you get another job. You know, you finish your job on the Saturday and you start work on the Monday. Mm-hmm. It has to be, because you have to stay, you have to pay the bills. Otherwise you lose the ability to pursue a career as a performer. I mean, this is only something that I'm learning now, is this, I've always seen my sort of life in these silos of activity. Like, you know, I go and be an actor for 8 months doing a play, and then I return to the rest of my life. And what I'm battling with now and trying to mesh together in a more holistic way is bringing those things together. So my life actually exists within within my acting work, and my acting is more more comfortable sitting within my life, because I can't keep on putting my life on hold and expecting to come back and for my life to be beautiful and nourished and as I want it to be. You know, that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And I know the reasons why I was doing that. You know, it's because it's a nice place to run away to. It's easy. It means you know, if you're going to do an 8-month acting job, you haven't got to look for work anymore. Mm-hmm. You've only got to learn one lot of lines. You haven't got to do another self-tape within 24 hours. You haven't got to go and see all these plays you didn't really want to go and see and you can't afford, and pretend you're fascinated by them. You know, you just don't, you're to release. All you've got to do is you go and stay in somebody else's house. You wander around the shopping mall or the park for a few hours, and then you go and sit there in the green room and have a coffee and moan and bitch and check Twitter every 10 seconds, and then you do your play, and then you have a few drinks and you go home. I mean, that's easy. You don't have to. There's not a lot of thinking involved in that. Mm-hmm. And for the 2 hours that the play's going on, you get the opportunity to have a laugh, to have fun, to do your job. So it's bringing those things together, which is what my challenge is at the moment. And sometimes I can do it and sometimes I don't do it so well.
I mean, I think that's a really common experience for a lot of actors, that kind of compartmentalizing and sort of only being responsible in one, in a sense, and kind of neglecting the other. And I think it's easy to do, I think, because, as you say, the walking around the supermarkets and the few drinks after after the show, that's a world that's very attractive and lovely to be in. And if the opportunity is to ignore everything else, then, I think most of us do that. And like you say, that meshing of the two is probably quite an important process. You might have already, we're coming near the end, because I know you have to
I've told them I'm going to be 15 minutes late.
Oh, fantastic. We've got 15 minutes for this question then, Andrew. Okay. I mean, I think you've spoken to it already a little bit. But I mean, the fundamental question that I've been asking over these has been around, what does it mean to live well as a creative in the world today? So given the journey that you have been on and your experiences before drama school, over the last couple of years, at the National, in Devon, in all of what you've been doing, and with this idea of these silos of activity that might need to be drawn together, with all that in mind, what is it to live well as an actor today?
Apart from good red wine.
You're the first person to say that first, so I'll take that.
I bet a lot of people say it's easy, isn't it? As I was thinking, shall I say that? I was thinking it's so cheap, but yeah, it is important. You know, there's nothing like a nice bottle of, I mean, it isn't going to be hugely expensive. Anyway, but I think that what's really important is to stay true to yourself and that things you do nourish you. Mm-hmm. That at the end of it, you don't feel like that was a waste of however many hours I've spent doing it. Because, we pass this way but once. Mm-hmm. And it's really important that we do things that take us forward, that nourish our body and our souls. And if you're doing a job which, if you spent the last 3 months just doing corporate role play and you're sort of getting a bit fed up with that, make sure you're doing some other stuff. Make sure you're taking time to go to a gallery, that you're exploring a new park, that you are taking time to get up earlier in the morning and do a yoga session or to go for a run or whatever. Because those things, if you neglect them, then the bad things, the difficult things, you know, the commuting on the tube when people are coughing at you and things, they take on too big a part of your life. And I think it's so important that you stay in the center of your life, in the center of your decisions, as much as you can. And it isn't always possible, but make it possible as often as you possibly can. And take every opportunity to take responsibility for what you're doing, rather than, oh, well, it's my agent, or it's the environment, or it's the economic climate, or it's coronavirus. Yeah, it's all of those things. But I mean, there's a really good book by that woman who is the head of voice at Guildhall, and it's called Presence.
Yes.
Can't remember her name.
Patsy Rosenberg. Patsy Rosenberg, I think.
Yes, Patsy Rosenberg. It's about presence. And it's about these 3 circles. And it's about your circle of influence. Mm-hmm. And the little one in the middle is you and what you can directly influence. The second one is what you can indirectly influence. And the third one, which is what you can't influence at all. So an example of something out in the big one is like, I can't make any difference to the date that the football starts again. The second little circle is climate change. Mm-hmm. You know, there are some things that would be in the outer circle, but some things would be in the second circle, like recycling, making responsible choices. And then the little one in the middle would be, a work example would be, what do you do with the information once you've been to see a play which you enjoyed, of making contact, of being proactive, of phoning, of actually learning your lines properly to do a self-tape rather than busking it. All those sort of things that you personally can do. And I think the more you can do to strengthen that small circle in the middle, the more powerful you become. And it's like you're pushing out these edges of things you can influence. And the more you can influence, for me, the better I feel. You know, the more empowered I feel, the more comfortable I feel, the more I feel that actually that I'm valuable, that I'm giving something, that I'm not just a pointless ping pong ball blowing in the wind, which it's very easy to feel like that. And whenever I do feel like that, it's no, pull yourself up, stop that, grow up, go outside and do something positive that you can control and wrest that control back.
I mean, that's everything in a nutshell. That's so wonderfully put as well. I mean,
but you have to do it every single day, every hour of every day. Because you can't think, oh, I'm just too tired today, so I'll just watch Loose Women and blame the world for the fact that I haven't worked for 6 months. No. Because the next day when you go back and you say, right, I'm empowered now, I'm going to push up my inner circle, it's even harder.
I mean, yeah, there's absolutely, like, I think a behavioral aspect to that idea, that there's a continuousness to, it's a practice, I guess, this way of thinking and this way of pushing yourself out. But yeah. I think what's really important to me hearing it, to remind myself, is that sense of wanting to be in the center of your own decision making, and that sense of influence. Because I think quite often the narrative, a lot of actors especially, I think, but I think artists of every kind would have, is that it's that, well, I must reach out towards the nice golden thing, and when I am deemed to be acceptable, I'll be brought into that world, and a kind of a separation then that ends with a sort of judgment. The actor saying, well, you know, the National, they're never going to pick me or whatever. And it does what you say. It sort of completely numbs your ability to nourish yourself or do anything repeatedly.
Yeah.
I think you expressed it beautifully there when you were talking about that way in which, focusing on that core, you strengthen yourself, you feel more empowered, essentially.
It's like, you know, it's like the sort of the mind game of planking, isn't it? you know, we spend a lot of time doing that, but we don't spend a lot of time doing this. And, you know, the biggest obstacle between me and my goals is me. And the good news is that I'm in control of me. I just have to assert that control. And some days it's like falling off a log. Some days it's like climbing the Himalayas. You know, and you just need to make sure that it's the log day, not the Himalayas day, so that you can take control. Things about, you know, the National doesn't employ actors like me. They did. You know, I did in Twelfth Night. What did I do? I moved benches around the stage. When it went out on, it was on that NT Live thing.
Yes.
I hardly saw myself. I thought, at the end of it, I thought, was I cut? Literally, I think I saw myself about 4 times. And when they sent me a check for being in it, I was like, this is embarrassing. I should send this back. But hey, I was the one who carried the bench. And I went on and did an audition performance of Andrew Eguchi. And I did it well. And I got a new agent through it. So, you know, you don't know until you've stepped into something. And I think this was something that dogged me to begin with, that it was like, there was this huge, great hole out there. And it looked really scary, and it was cold, and it was wet, and it was damp. But until you begin to see that hole as a friendly thing, that it's an opportunity rather than a threat,